Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Julia Palencia and I work on our resource development team here at Mile High United Way. We are so excited to have so many people join us for our first community briefing. Before we get started, there's just a couple of logistics I wanted to share with you. First, we've gone ahead and made sure that everybody's line is muted. If you have any questions, submit them over at the Q&A bar. We're reserving time at the end to answer as many questions as we can. And if we don't have time to get them all today, someone from our team will be reaching out to get in touch with you after the program. Also, if you run into any technical questions or issues, you can submit that in the Q&A bar. But today we are so grateful to have two of our Mile High United Way leaders here to talk with us, Chelsea Carver and Femmine Vela. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Chelsea, to kick us off.
Thank you, Julia. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chelsea Carver, and I am our Chief Development Officer here at Mile High United Way. As Julia mentioned, this is our first community briefing, and I'm really excited to have everyone here. The past several weeks have been such a roller coaster for us here at United Way because on the one hand, we are watching this incredible devastation that this disease can wreak on families that we work with on a daily basis, to the thousands of people that are calling our 211 helpline. And then on the other hand, we are watching literally hundreds of volunteers step up and say, what can I do to help? And thousands of donors give of their resources in order to support this work. And so I wanted to start today on just a note of gratitude to all of you who have stepped up when our community needs it the most. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are incredibly grateful and are working really hard to ensure that we can support everyone that needs us. So since today's webinar has a little more than 150 people on it, I thought that we could do a little overview about Mile High United Way, and then a little bit of an overview about how we're responding to the COVID-19 crisis before we dive deeply into our 211 helpline. So I started today's presentation with these two pictures because of the, at this point, kind of crazy parallels that exist. So the picture on the left is Denver in 1887, and the picture on the right is Mile High United Way's building in 2019. And for those of you that don't know, Mile High United Way was founded in 1887, and it always sounds like a really bad joke. It was a priest, a rabbi, a woman, minister, and they got together in the face of a rampant tuberculosis epidemic to collectively see how they could take care of their community. And so here we are 133 years ago, really looking at how we do that same work in the face of yet another epidemic, how we work collectively to coordinate a community response in order to take care of our own. So this position, sitting at sort of the middle of that community response, sitting next to government partners, sitting next to our business partners, sitting next to our community partners, our nonprofit friends and individual donors, we have always prided ourselves on being that sort of central hub. But I don't think that there's been any time in my tenure here that I have ever been able to see how crystal clearly that that space is really needed. And so it's just been really wonderful for us to sit here and help with the state and the city to coordinate some of that response. So I thought I would start with just a little bit about how we are working in that coordinated community response, and how we're sort of sitting in partnership right now with the state of Colorado and the city and others. So I think most of you may have heard on Governor Polis's afternoon press conferences that Mile High United Way is serving as the fiscal sponsor for the Colorado COVID Relief Fund. That fund now sits at just under $15 million, and we have already sent out the first 206 grants for more than 4.8 million, and we did that all last week. So that's amazing to have that resource back out into the community. We are also working in collaboration with other partners like the Gary Community Foundation to help provide emergency childcare for our first responders so that they're able to continue their life-saving work and know that their children are cared for and safe. In addition, we have partnered with the City and County of Denver on a couple of different things. We are the one-stop shop for all things volunteering in the City and County of Denver. And we are also working with the City and County on our small business support. And I'll talk about that in more depth in just a second. But the other part of a coordinated community response, as I said, you've got government and nonprofit and corporation, is that nonprofit space. And so we have the ability, because of our 211 helpline, to hear information coming at the very minute it's happening from our community members. And we also have the ability to hear from our nonprofit partners, places where Colorado's nonprofit sector is really strong or places where it might need a little bit more support. And so I'm happy to say that as a part of that coordinated community response, Mile High United Way just yesterday released an additional $1 million in rapid response funding to our nonprofit partners. It was to 50 different organizations, and those decisions were made in part because of what our nonprofit partners had told us and because of what we'd been hearing from our 211 helpline. But those grants ranged anywhere from a little tiny food pantry that was literally the only food resource for a neighborhood to, as I mentioned before, that sort of emergency childcare and our childcare centers so that those doors can stay open when our first responders need it, or as you and I start needing to go back to work. So then when you think about sort of that coordinated community response, Mile High United Way is very proud to serve in that role, but we're also really proud to do our own direct service. And so the way that we look at our direct service programming is on a neighborhood by neighborhood approach. We have done heat mapping on the entire Front Range to see where are those pockets of neighborhoods that need us and our services the most. And then we bring multitudes of programs into those neighborhoods to try and support a holistic look at what that community might need. And so on this slide here, we have our Bridging the Gap program, which is for youth who are emancipating out of the foster care system. And we've pivoted that program in the face of COVID-19 to really continue to provide them stable housing, but also looking at how do you connect them with telehealth and mental health services in this time. We know that they can be a population that can be a bit disconnected, and so really making sure that they stay connected and have that great connection. United for Families, so that's our work that we do with our sort of youngest learners, those getting ready for kindergarten. I mentioned Keep the Lights On Fund. That's that emergency childcare grants to keep those doors open in this time. And then United for Schools. I don't know how many of you have children, but I have 3. And prior to this, we had 1 laptop for our kids to use to do their homework. And it's just untenable to try and do remote learning with only 1 laptop. And a lot of the families that we are working with in our communities either have no laptops or they might have one that the school district gave to them as this remote learning began. So Mile High United Way has purchased and distributing 100 laptops throughout the neighborhoods to families so that their children can continue remote learning. And then finally, I mentioned just a second ago about our partnership with the City and County of Denver around that small business support. And so our United for Business program is partnering with the Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, that's acronym is DEDO, and they've established a $2 million emergency relief program that provides cash grants up to $7,500 to qualifying small businesses. So we will administer that fund, but in addition to that, we will also provide technical assistance and business consulting to those small businesses to help them navigate this new world sort of post-COVID and all the things that come along with it. So the piece I know that everyone came here today, though, was to hear about 211. And so I will turn it over to Femmine here in just a second. But I did want to do just a quick little brag because he won't say it this way. His slides are full of amazing data that we've heard from our community. And you're going to hear a number here that we have received 27,000 calls from our community since this COVID crisis began. And so that number is amazing in magnitude on its own. But what I think is really sort of staggering, and what I would ask all of you to think about, is 27,000 calls are coming from a neighbor, my brother, your sister, a mom, a dad. Those are all people who are reaching the end of their rope and are reaching out for help. And Femmine and his team are the voices on the other end of that line when they are saying, I am all out of other options. What can you do to help me? And so, again, I want to say thank you to all of you for helping us ensure that Femmine and his team can be the voice on the other end of the line. And then Femmine, thank you to you for answering those calls. And with that, I will turn it over and let you talk about the amazing work that your team is doing. Oh, Femmine, you are muted.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Femmine Avila. I serve as the director of Mile High United Way's 211 Help Center, which serves 25 counties across the state of Colorado, the Metro Denver area, and Northern Colorado in partnership with the United Way of Larimer County and United Way of Weld County. I've been with the 211 program since we've launched 16 years ago, so I'm an old timer, and just delighted for the opportunity to share more about our program, the work that we're doing right now, and what 211 does in general. So the first thing I want to do is share, before COVID, I remember one of the calls that we received in 211. It was from an individual who needed help paying their car payment. And we manage a database of over 7,500 services across the state of Colorado. And we know what exists and what may not exist. And one of the resources that just doesn't exist across the community is help to pay for car payments. Part of that call, when we heard car payment assistance, again, automatically triggered. We know resources don't necessarily exist, but through the power of conversation, we were able to understand that that request for a car payment was much more than just that. It was a request from someone who was using that car to work, so they were a delivery driver, and in addition, they were doubling the car as a shelter, so it's where they lived. And listening to subtle hints allowed our staff to pull that out and also allowed us to go in a different direction. So making a very long story short, we were able to secure support for that individual based on the garnering of new data pieces. But that's really what we do in 211. So when I think about 211, we're a confidential service that helps people navigate complex challenges. Where do you go when you need help? Friends and family are usually the individuals that you reach out to first, but sometimes they're not in a position to provide support. So usually the next step for individuals is to reach out to community organizations. You'll reach out to some of those well-known and well-recognized organizations just to hear, I'm sorry, we don't provide that service. Or we don't serve people who live in your particular zip code. You have to have a child in your home, etc. And that's where 211 is most helpful in helping people understand what are the options out there, what are solutions to some of their situations, and we help guide to those resources within the community that exist. So 211 is, again, an easy to remember number. We have trained bilingual professionals across the state who are ready to help anyone who may need help. Before we transition on to the next slide, I did want to share the gentleman that you see up on the screen is one of our navigators. He's been with the program for 7 years and is a delight to be around, a delight to work with. His name is Willie. He came to us from the Colorado Center for the Blind, and a partnership that we had with them where we adapted our technology and our systems to allow individuals who didn't have sight to contribute to others within the community who were looking for support. So he's been just a tremendous asset to our team, and Jeff wanted to share that. It's pretty neat. Next slide, please. I mentioned we're that place to call when you need help. We manage 7,500 services across the state of Colorado. And when I say we manage, we personally vet through human connection what resources an organization is providing, the hours that they're open, their target population, the eligibility requirements, maybe the documents that someone has to come with, whether it's a 3-day eviction notice or a copy of the utility bill, etc. And we know that there are so many resources across the state of Colorado that want to be helpful, but even getting to the right one could sometimes be a challenge, even though it may exist. So we have a specialized team, and that team is reaching out to organizations all day long, every day, to make sure that when we receive a call from an individual, we can say with certainty, here's their service offering. Here's the hours that they're open. If you're going to go to this resource, take these documents. Again, we want to make sure that as we guide individuals, we do that with accuracy and with integrity. Next slide, please. So before I talk about this chart here, did want to share last year, we received 93,000 requests for help. So our daily average from callers who, again, are looking for housing, rent, utility, food, emergency shelter, medical clinics, legal clinics, etc. Our daily average volume is around 350 contacts. Since the beginning of the stay-at-home order, our volume has nearly tripled. You'll see on the chart that our daily peak was over 2,100 calls, almost 2,200 calls. And those calls are for primarily basic needs. So a lot of individuals reaching out saying, I've lost my job, I've had a decrease in income, I need help finding food delivery services, I need help paying my rent. It's really a direct impact as a result of COVID. As new information is released across the media, whether it's the stay-at-home order, we're seeing a lot of questions come up, and we love being that partner. We partnered with the 911 offices to say, how do we alleviate some of the volume coming in to 911 so that 911 could really respond to true emergencies, and people who say, I'm just wondering if I could go outside during the stay-at-home order, or can I go to my local park? They don't tie up that emergency line, that we're able to support them in 211. Some of the challenges that we've had, though, our system wasn't set up to respond to nearly 2,200 calls. So that's where our organization really was all hands on deck in training upwards of 50 individuals who are staff of Mile High United Way, and trying to prepare them for answering 211 related calls, engaging volunteers to come and support our inquiries, but we've really had to scale our lines rapidly to be able to respond to all the inquiries coming through. We've also grown our paid staff, so we've recruited navigators to just make sure that we can continue to respond to the continuous flow of inquiries coming into our office. Just today, I looked at some of the data, and we're still receiving calls from individuals who are looking to go to the park, or are wondering if the local rec center is going to open soon, if their local food pantry is operating, what the stay-at-home order lift actually means. So we're still filling all of those COVID-related calls, in addition to how do I get help with housing, rent, utilities, etc. So for us, scaling our team, we're really trying to position ourselves to be that helping hand for people who need help, and for people who may find themselves in this new environment and never had to have asked for support, but now they need help navigating some of those resources. So for us, we're in it for the long haul. We appreciate our staff, our clients. We're just so happy to be able to be here and respond to all the community inquiries that are coming through. So that's it for our 211 piece. I'm sorry, one additional slide you'll see here. We do track at a very granular level what are the requests that that people are generating into 211. And we have broken out our data by March and April, and you'll see the number one request that we're facing right now is rental assistance. Food, and then other basic need items. One quick addition is when people call in and ask for a service, finding that resource can oftentimes be the easiest part of our job. Because we're skilled at searching a database, we've structured that database to make it user-friendly for our staff to search. The harder part of our role is really guiding people to alternative options when maybe a resource doesn't exist or has been exhausted within the community. And that's a more challenging part of saying, I know you're calling for this, a resource doesn't exist, let's shift to plan B. But that's something else that our team is skilled at doing and that we really promote. So that's kind of 211 in a nutshell, both pre-COVID, post-COVID, and what we plan to do continuing to move forward. And I think now we're going to turn it over to our moderator.
Yeah, thank you so much, Femmine. That was wonderful. And Chelsea, for sharing information about how Mile High United Way is responding to COVID. And right now we'll open it up to questions that you all may have. So feel free to submit them over in the bar on the side, and we'll read through a couple of them. But we've had a couple come through already as you all were talking. So we'll start with one for you, Femmine. How do you all choose the resources that go in the database, and how have those resources changed since COVID?
Sure. We have a resource team that connects with community organizations, and when we were first positioned as a statewide line for information and referral services and to help guide people to community resources, we really allowed the types of inquiries that were coming in to drive what new resources are we looking for. We had an exhaustive list of community resources, so we also re-engaged with each one of them to try to understand how has your service shifted as a result of COVID. What additional resources do you recommend we engage with? And it's been hard trying to manage all the information that comes out. There are days where information changes constantly, and that's where that team, that resource team, really becomes critical to say, we're going to track these resources, we're going to track any changes that might be occurring. We're going to maybe shift from our standard practices of housing, nonprofit organizations, government, and services that are kind of gaps within those two industries, listing some of the private practices or businesses that support those. But we've shifted, we've tried our best to really make sure when people call in for information, we're adapting our database to contain the information to respond to those.
And in regards to those resources, do you transfer people to the resources to make sure they answer, or do you give phone numbers and names?
It's a little bit of both. So each resource that we refer to has unique hours of operation. So dependent on the time that someone's calling, if that resource is open, we'll absolutely offer the client to connect them to the resource. We know there's a higher success rate of them following through on the information when we do that. But we also make sure that clients have the name, number. We're adapting our systems to be able to email them all the information so that they have it and is conveniently accessible. But absolutely, if appropriate, we always ask clients if we can connect them to a resource and transfer them.
And how does making use of these resources affect someone's immigration status? Do you know?
There are some resources that have indicated within our platform that you'll need proof of citizenship to apply for that. So our database contains lots of resources, and for us, it's really our responsibility to screen through. And when someone shares, maybe I'm not a citizen, it's our responsibility to go through and identify, well, what resources are you still eligible for? And try to render those options for that client. We know the community, the undocumented community is a very vulnerable community right now, and we're doing our best to help them as much as possible as well.
So this is a question from an individual at an organization who has listings with 211. What is the best way to submit changes to their services as they relate to COVID?
Well, we love those inquiries because when organizations help maintain their data, it just helps that much more in providing accurate information to the community. We have a dedicated line that you can dial. It's 303-561-2110, and that connects you directly to the resource team. We also have an email address that you can send any changes to, and our team will update those pretty quickly. I don't want to share that because there may be an underscore, and I don't want you to send an email to an address that doesn't exist, but happy to push that information out afterwards.
Perfect. And how are you and your team reaching out to and supporting folks who may not have internet access?
So our service is available by phone. You can dial 211, you can text in, you can search our website for resources on your own. That would be the hardship for someone who doesn't have internet access. So I'd say for those who don't have internet access, dialing 211 or texting us is how we're providing that support right now. Our staff is working remotely. When we're in our office, we do have walk-in services, and we know that right now we're not able to fulfill that walk-in need. But we're hoping that those individuals who do need help are still able to engage with us either online by dialing 211 or by texting us.
Awesome. So we've had a couple more questions come through, so we'll make sure to follow up with everybody who submitted those so that we can get those answered for you. But a few questions have come in about volunteering. So this is a great transition into sharing more ways to get involved. So first, I just want to thank you again, Femmine and Chelsea, for hopping on this call with us today. We really appreciate you sharing this information with us and how everything has changed. For those of you at home, if you loved what you heard Femmine discuss and are inspired to jump in and help, there's an opportunity specifically to volunteer with 211, which is really great. And there are also more virtual volunteer opportunities that we have for individuals, families, and groups. So these sites are listed on the slide, but we will also send it out. So you can just click the links when you get those in an email. If you're encouraged by what Chelsea shared with how generous this community has been amidst the crisis, we'd love for you to be our partner in this work by investing in the Mile High United Way recovery efforts. And then, of course, most importantly, please call 211 or visit 211colorado.org if you or someone you know needs resources and support. And again, this information will get sent out in a follow-up email, so you'll have access to the link. And with that, thank you so much, Femmine and Chelsea, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Julia. I did just want to close today and again end today on a note of gratitude. I am consistently amazed and proud of Colorado and how we take care of our own. And I'm just very grateful that all of you are a part of that effort to make sure we take care of those who need us most. So best wishes and have a wonderful rest of your day and stay safe and stay healthy.